Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our EU Alliance webinar dedicated to the USA mission. My name is Thierry Louvet. I work for Systematic. Systematic is a deep tech cluster based in the Paris region. We have a fairly packed program today, so I will just mention that if you have questions, please use the questions tab on the Livestorm screen. It's the one which is next to chat. So please use more the question than the chat. The question is really for the audience to ask questions, and we will try to answer them at the end. And now I hand over to Julie Rafton-Jolivet of Tectera, coordinator of the EU Alliance program, who will give you more information about the project. Julie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Thierry, and good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our speakers based in the US. So, on the behalf of the EU Alliance consortium of partners, I would like to welcome you also to this webinar dedicated to the US defense market. We are very happy to be with you today, and I would like also to give a special thank to our speakers. Thank you for your support, and thank you for sharing your expertise on this market, and globally for supporting our initiatives. A word also to thank the cluster partners beyond the consortium of EU Alliance who have promoted this webinar, and globally who have promoted the project since its beginning. I can move. Yeah, I will move the slides.
Yeah, you can move the slide.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I can go fast on that as everyone. Yes. So, EU Alliance stands for European Alliance for International Business Development on advanced materials and connectivity for defense and security markets. So, more precisely, we will work inside this project on two areas. First of all, international market access for European SMEs. And second of all, cross-sectoral synergies for dual-use technologies, covering a large scope of products, technologies, or services. So concretely, the consortium is working on the organization of companies delegation in 4 target countries: the US, Canada, Japan, and Indonesia, with the development of dedicated services to prepare those missions and to support companies also after those missions. So companies we address here can come from various industries, such as technical textiles, and more globally, smart and advanced materials and technologies, connectivity, deep tech, cybersecurity, etc. So yes, a large scope of industry with the willing to initiate or to intensify their presence on the 4 countries that we target here, and in the defense and security markets. So EU Alliance is a consortium of 6 partners, as you can see here, and this consortium is really built to offer a broad cross-sectoral approach. We cover technical textiles with 3 partners. Tectera, the coordinator of the project, is the innovation cluster dedicated to the French textile industry. We have Entity, Italian Research and Technological Innovation Center in Textile. We have Pointex, Textile Innovation Cluster based in Biella, Italy. We cover also connectivity, high technologies, and deep tech with SIT, technological district working on ICT, and Systematic, as Thierry mentioned, the European deep tech cluster. And at the end, we also cover more broadly advanced materials, equipment, and ICT with NIDV based in the Netherlands. So today we will focus on the US markets. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it because the objective is really to leave the floor to our speakers. But I wanted to share just some thoughts with you. So obviously, the US defense market is a complex market that usually takes time and energy, and probably most of companies that enter this market will share the same constat. But what I wanted to share also is this is, however, a huge market that represents, above all, opportunities. It is the first defense budget in the world, and by far, our speaker will share some data with you. There is an increasing share of equipment acquisition, also linked to the increase of R&D spendings. There is also an emerging sector related to the commercial field, with the idea of linking what is being done in the civil field to apply it to the defense fields. There are also some exemptions for some European countries. For example, we can mention some exemption related to the Small Business Act. So there are some opportunities to take. And I will leave the floor to the speakers after that to share their thoughts and their knowledge about that. Also, as clusters, we develop connections locally to be able to organize the mission that we will present you at the end of the webinar. And we also shared a call for expression of interest, where SMEs confirm their interest in this market. So for all these reasons, we decided to propose a European mission to the US. Just to give you an overview of the objective of the US mission, but more broadly the objectives of the missions in the EU Alliance project. The main objective is really to support SMEs to discover or to increase their knowledge on the local market. And they are designed to facilitate and accelerate contacts, to develop a network, carry out technological, commercial monitoring, while benefiting also from preparatory phase and logistical support during the mission. So the whole idea behind that is really to open doors more easily as a European delegation, representing a large number of companies, technologies, innovations, and we want to show a strong added value of the European delegation to be able to get access to high qualified contacts and generate opportunities for companies and globally for the delegation. So that's why we will see it later, but we will have B2B meetings with local companies, business association, research center, visits of industrial technological sites, networking time also. We decided also in most of the countries to target a relevant trade show that will allow us to get access to a large number of contacts in the same place. And for the US, we will target the AUSA trade show. So that will be organized the week of October 10th this year. And so I will share the rest of the program at the end of the webinar. And just a quick word on the call for SME selection that we decided to launch for this mission. We consider that the involvement of companies is also a key success of the mission. We want to design the mission to answer the needs of SMEs, and for that we need, obviously, to understand your needs, your objectives, your targets. We need to understand what is your offer, what is your previous experience in the US, your ambitions. We also have, I didn't mention it, but we also have the support of the European Commission. The EU Alliance project is funded by the European Commission. The European Commission supports our efforts and also support a part of the travel expenses for SMEs. So for all these reasons, we launched a call for SME selection that will run until the end of the month. And I will explain it also at the end of this webinar. But in the meantime, I will leave the floor now to our speakers. And thank you again for your support.
Thank you very much, Julie, for this overview. Yes, indeed, we have now a second session dedicated to the presence of the 3 European countries that are actually involved in the EU alliance, and that's why we have the pleasure to have with us the 3 defense cooperation attachés from France, the Netherlands, and Italy. So I'm very pleased that they were able to find the time to be with us today. And I will hand the floor, first of all, to Mr. François WATTEAU, who's the Defense Cooperation Attaché at the French Embassy in Washington. François, the floor is yours. And as you know, you are able to move the slides by yourself.
Okay, thank you, Thierry. Does everyone hear me well?
Yes.
We can hear you. We can't see you anymore, but...
Oh, what a pity.
It doesn't matter. I mean, obviously, maybe it's your camera, but...
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
I didn't change anything, but okay. Okay. Yeah, I am Colonel François WATTEAU. I am the Defense Cooperation Attaché at the French Embassy here in Washington, D.C. I've been in the US for 2 years now, and I am also the representative of the French procurement agency, DGA, in the US. So I am what we call in France an ingénieur d'armement. So I will begin, sorry for that, by some figures. As Julie said before, the defense budget of the America is, of course, the first defense budget in the world, all by far. It represents approximately the sum of the 10 other defense budget kind. So you can see it's a real lot of money, and we know, and because they are publicly they are public, the figures for the acquisition budget and R&D budget, and as you can see, when you sum that two budgets, you have approximately 200 billions for acquisition and R&D, and it's in a permanent increase. Just to give a rough order of magnitude, in France, the acquisition budget, sorry, I don't know the figure for the Netherlands and for Italy, the acquisition budget for France, it's 10 times less the American one. So you can see that it's a very big budget and a very big market. Sorry for that. It looks on my computer. It looks like the figure for the import of foreign defense goods by the US is not shown. Did you see the figures, or it's strange or weird symbol?
It's a bit scrambled. I think it's a bit scrambled, François. It's a bit scrambled, but
yeah. Okay. Yeah, so USA is the 8th importer of defense goods in the world, so it's a lot of money. It's approximately $6 billion budget. But if you make a ratio between the defense budget and the import budget for defense goods, you can see that the US defense market is mostly addressed to their US domestic company, because the ratio, as you see, $6 billion for an acquisition budget of $150 billion. It's less than 3 or 4% of acquisition in foreign countries. Nevertheless, USA is the 7th client of the France, and our relationship in the field of defense equipment is relatively balanced. Another particularity of the DoD and as far as acquisition is concerned is that in the European country, you normally have But usually you have only one acquisition or procurement agency for all the services. In the US, as the DoD is a very, very big entity, you have acquisition services for all the different branches of the armed force. So Army has his own budget and his own acquisition entity. The same for Navy, the same for Air Force, maybe sooner or later the same for Space Force, the same for Special Force. So come at the back of the slide is for Special Forces. And within, it's a very simplified chart of the DoD organization, but even within all these different agencies and entities, you have, it's the entity framed in red, people that can make acquisition. And in that huge organization, you can imagine that you have some silo or stovepipe effect. And maybe the Army will be interested in a certain technology, but the Navy there will not know, and that the Army will have that kind of need. So if you want to address the entire spectrum of the US market, you will have to address, I would say, maybe all these components. That makes it's another difficulty to address this market. I will try to go fast in order to not to wait sometimes for my colleagues, but here I have listed the high-level priorities of the DoD published when Mr. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, was appointed last year. I will not elaborate on each different priorities, but you can notice that, of course, China is in everybody's mood in the US as a pacing challenger, I would say. There is a strong stress put on innovation and modernization, and that certainly may interest you a lot. And the new administration and Lloyd Austin has reaffirmed the will to work with allies and partners. I will not elaborate on that, but it's one difference with the previous administration. On the next slide, I have listed the different priorities of the different services as we know them and evaluate them at the French embassy. For some of them, it's public. It's in official documents. For the other, it's much more our feelings or what we have gathered during your meetings with American colleagues. Once again, I will not elaborate on each different priorities, but I think here you have the research and engineering top priorities. You will find all the user nation in these days, but we can put the thread on biotechnology. I think maybe it will be a field that will interest some of your companies. Renewable energy generation and storage, human-machine interfaces, and so on and so on. So you can see you have a lot of different priorities, but some are maybe addressable by small businesses, I would say. When we go to the services, and I begin with the Air Force, once again, I will not elaborate, but you can see that, for example, there is, of course, big demand for big systems, but there is also demand in the field of that conceptual training. For the Army, once again, you see that the synthetic training environment and how we can save money by training the warfighter, I would say, in a virtual environment is one of the priority of the Army. And just for your knowledge, future vertical lift is the other name for the future combat and transport US helicopters. In the field of Navy, you can say, I will only stress two priorities. UAV, USV, and UV, the family of system. So there is a strong efforts in that field in the US, and I think that European companies have certainly a lot to offer in that field. And you can also notice that it's much more linked with US organization, a strong will to modernize the shipyards. That, for I would say, as far as we understand it, for structural reason, need now a strong modernization. Special forces now. SOCOM is for Special Forces Command. Special forces are here in the US and as it is in other, I would say, countries, a very good door to enter the market because they are very keen of innovative solution. They are very keen of quick solution, and they are very reactive. They can dispose of their budgets maybe more easily than the other entities. I would say the difficulty with the special forces is are changing very, very fast. They are very active. So you have to, it's public, and it's on internet, you can see that. But I will say every 6 months their priorities are changing because, you know, we are living in a changing environment. I will only cite one interesting entity that you may research on if you want to work with special forces. The name is SoftWorks. Maybe I can read it, I can write it, I can give you the link to their internet site. Maybe I have not that much time now. The last slide, just to recall our mission as a defense cooperation attaché here in DC. We are responsible of all the acquisition of France in the US by G2G process called here foreign military sales, or directly with direct contact to the US industry. It became direct commercial sales. So we are dealing with the US government, and we are also dealing with US companies directly here at the embassy. We also manage technical and capability cooperation between our two countries. And of course, we try to survey all that concern US technologies, US budget, and US processing. Two last points. As far as exports and I would say support of French companies, mainly because we are paid by the French taxpayer. We can help you, and we will be very happy to help you if you contact us or if you try to reach us. We can give you advice. We can help you, and the DGI can help you to participate to defense exhibitions here in the US. But I think that my colleagues will talk more deeply about that office. We also can manage to make you contact the FC office of the DoD, who is a good door to access the US market. And of course, you don't have to forget that as far as defense is concerned, you always have to manage the export control issues. There is strong regulation in the US, very complex. The name here are ITAR and ERS. I will not elaborate on that deeply. I think we will not have the time for that, but you have to know that as far as you will work for European, US companies or US customer, you will maybe sooner or later be concerned by that kind of regulations. And they are very complex, and you have to take that into account. And of course, reversely, you have also to manage if your goods are submitted to the French export control regulation about defense goods. You also have to comply with this process. But on that point, we at the DGA can help you as far as you, of course, are concerned about the French regulation. It doesn't concern or Italian or of course. I think I'm over. I hope I don't take too much time. You have here all the point of contact. So I am François WATTEAU, but I'm working with two other colleagues here in the field of cooperation. Tota, who is taking care of Aerospace Force and Marine Corps cooperation with the US. And my other colleague is Mr. Sébastien Poli, who actually works for our cooperation in the field with Army, Navy, I will say all the remaining entities.
Yeah. That was it, yes.
Yes, I think I'm over. So thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
your
Mr.
attention.
Bartolessi. Thank you, François. So effectively, we probably need to speed up a bit. So I will straight away give the floor to Pieter-Henk SCHROOR. Pieter-Henk is the Defence Co-operation Attaché, otherwise the counterpart of François WATTEAU, if I'm not mistaken, at the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The floor is yours, Pieter-Henk.
Thank you very much, Thierry. I hope everyone can hear me well.
Fine, loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, it's my pleasure to inform you today about the challenges and opportunities, as I have called it, to enter the U.S. defense market. As was already also noted by others, the U.S. market offers great opportunities. It's the biggest market in the world, and many companies aim to get access to that market. But there are also quite a few challenges, if not difficulties, to enter that market and to get access to all the opportunities that lie on that market. So what I would like to do in the next 10 minutes or so, I will try to sketch you a realistic perspective. I do not want to discourage you, but I want to sketch a realistic perspective of what it takes to become active on the US market, based on the experience that I gained over the past 4 years being a Defense Cooperation Attaché here in the US. How can I move the slides?
You need to put your mouse on the actual slide, and then you can move. That's it. You got it.
Okay. So here I am. So it's when I came here as a defense attaché, and I spoke to quite a few companies, Dutch companies. They said, well, okay, it is difficult, but not undoable to get access to the defense market. And if you want to be, the question, if you will be successful on the US defense market, depends very much on quite a few factors. And it's actually those factors that I will try to describe with you. So what makes the US market a difficult market? Well, there are laws, rules, and regulations, but also culture that I think you have to take into account. Quite contrary to what many people think, many non-US people think, the US is much more, let's say, I don't want to call it a legalistic, but it's a very legally oriented country. So for nearly everything you do in this country, you need a lawyer. But you also, in order to abide by tax laws, you need accountants. So the first thing you should be very much aware of is that, well, it is indeed a very law-oriented country. That goes for contract law, and it goes for tax law, but that also goes if you that is more in general. But if you want to get access to the defense market, you have to take into account that there are certain regimes and certain regulations that will thoroughly influence your scope of activities. Those are export controls, rules and regulations, ITAR when it comes to military goods and services, EAR when it comes to dual use goods and services. You have to make sure that you comply with cyber standards. The US is currently evolving and developing a new system of cyber standards, CMMC, and they impose those standards on everyone who wants to do business, military business with the US. In order to comply with that, you have to make sure that your company meets those standards. Of course, if you, especially in the field of R&D, you have to make sure that your intellectual property rights are effectively protected, and that is a real challenge, because if you if you together with the US government, if you want to develop a certain product or a certain service, the first thing that normally flies out of the window are your intellectual property rights. So that is also can be a hampering factor, but at least you should be very keen on protecting your intellectual property rights well. And then, of course, there's this famous Buy American legislation, which can be a hampering factor for non-US companies to enter the market. There's a law stemming from 1933 that states that the US government, when it buys products for governmental use, so to speak, 50% of that product should be American. And then there's a big discussion on what actually constitutes those 50%. But that, of course, is quite a protective measure. And every year there are even proposals made in Congress to increase that percentage from of 50% to even 75% or higher. So we cannot deny that there are protectionist tendencies in the US. The good news, though, is that goes especially for France, the Netherlands, and Italy, and a few more countries, we have so-called reciprocal defense procurement MOUs with the US. And those the reciprocal procurement, those reciprocal defense procurement MOUs make that we are in principle exempt from Buy American legislation. So we are not affected by this 50% rule. But the thing here is that not every contractor in the US government is aware of this. So you always have to explain, if you are dealing with the US government as a company, that or if your government is dealing with the government on behalf of you, that your country has a reciprocal defense procurement MOU with the US, which makes you exempt from Buy American legislation. This is really important. Not many people in our governments know that, but also it is not very well known, even on the side of the contractors and requirement people in DoD, in the Department of Defense. So to summarize, if you want to get access to the market, if you want to become active on the US market, make sure that you are aware of legal issues, that you are aware of taxes, that you are aware of the language, of course, and that seems to be self-explanatory. But language is important, especially when dealing with law, and contracts. You really have to understand what you're actually doing, and legal text can, of course, be difficult. So make sure, and of course that takes. You have to invest in lawyers, in accountants. It will take time. It will cost energy, but you have to make those costs, I would say, before you can be successful on the market. That is simply a prerequisite for being active. If you think those costs are prohibitive, then well, you should really think twice before you start engaging with companies or the government in the US. But then again, I don't want to discourage you, because there are opportunities and there are ways to overcome those difficulties. As I already said, the way in the extent to which you can be successful on the market depends very much, of course, on your product, but also on your market approach. Are you mainly interested in business to business business, or business to government business? And be well aware of your role in the supply chain. Are you an OEM? Are you a tier 1, a tier 3, a tier 2, tier 3 supplier? That all is very it's very important in order to strategize and to define your approach to the market. For instance, questions you need to answer yourself when trying to consider to access the market? Will I be operating from abroad, or will I be opening a US subsidiary company? Therefore, this can be a very interesting option for OEMs. They have the means, they have the resources to do that. For smaller companies, I would not suggest trying to operate from abroad or opening a subsidiary company in the US, because then you have to navigate the market all by yourself. And then you, as I already said, you have to have all those lawyers, you have to have all those accountants, and it takes a lot of ahead investment, I would like to say, before you earn your very first dollar. So what then for smaller and medium-sized businesses? What would be another option? You can of course team up with a US prime. You try to get a contract with the Boeings, the Raytheons, and Lockheed Martins of this world. That can be very attractive. That can be very beneficial for your company. But also, being a small and medium-sized company yourself, you have to be aware that sooner or later you might find yourself in a rather asymmetrical relationship with such a big prime, and there's not too much to control yourself. So my advice always to Dutch companies, small and medium-sized companies, is try to find a partner. Try to find a business partner more or less of equal size, can be a bit bigger, can be maybe even a bit smaller, but try to partner with a US partner which is already active on the market, which has access to the market, and let them help you navigate the US market. Try to find a complementary partner, or maybe even who is in a company that is in the same field as you are, and see how you can set up some form of collaboration. Of course, it has to be a win-win for both parties, but there are opportunities. I've seen those work. So that, of course, is also an opportunity. And I think for most small and medium-sized businesses, this is actually the way to do it. But of course, there are various options. You can also work with an agent. There are many, let's say, independent business developers in the US. They can represent you as a company, but of course, they don't work for free. You have to pay them, and also depending on your relationship with that agent and the knowledge of that agent, the knowledge that agent has of the US market, of course, is very important as a factor to determine if you would like to work with an agent or not. So these are ways to overcome the difficulties if you are mainly interested in business-to-business business with the US. But of course, there are also other ways to get access at the US market, and that is through your government. And also, we are again based on your product and market approach and your role in the supply chain, but also your government can be of help. How do I mean that? There's a lot of government-to-government interaction on the US defense market. My government, for instance, buys quite, and so do the Italian and French governments, as was already shown in the slides from François. But if we buy military equipment on the US market, of course, we can ask for industrial participation in return. And that actually is a very effective way, and it has also proven to be, in the Dutch case, a very effective way for Dutch companies to get access to that market. So through industrial participation, lifting on military equipment contracts that your government establishes with the US. That can be either in a cooperative program. So, for instance, the Netherlands, we are a partner of the F-35 project, or the F-35 program. That is a cooperative program. So we all own a certain part of that program. And by being a co-developer and a co-owner of that program, so to speak, you can try to also give opportunities to your national industry. The same goes for foreign military sales. Foreign military sales is a US program by which you can buy via the US government military equipment on the US market. So it's not a direct government to business model, but it's a government to government model by which you acquire military equipment. And also foreign military sales, of course, offer opportunities for industrial participation. And the same goes for direct commercial sales. If we buy as a government directly on the US market, of course, we can also try to link a Dutch company to that deal. So these are all also means and ways to navigate the US market. And then there's a last opportunity not many people are aware of, but it is a interesting program. It's called the Foreign Comparative Testing Program. It's a program established by the US DoD, by which you can, if you are developing a product in TRL 6 to 9, you can have it tested by DoD, and if that test is successful and it fits into current requirements by the US, the Defense Services or DoD, then this might result in a contract after all. So that is also, and I think Francesco and François can tell you more about it. Probably they have their own FCT relation with DoD. At least the Netherlands does, and we had a FCT program running this spring again, and a few Dutch companies were selected to actually pitch their product, and hopefully this will result in further deliberations with the US on establishing a potential contract. We have to wait and see, but that is also a good way to get access to the US defense markets. Of course, I can tell much more than only in these 10 minutes about how to get access to the market. As I said, it is difficult, but absolutely not impossible. But you really, and I hope I have made that a little bit clear, you have to think before you act. It is a difficult market. If you set off the wrong foot, then it might become a very difficult adventure. But if you're well prepared, if you know what steps you need to take to get access, then it can, of course, the rewards can be very high, because it is the biggest market on the world. And I also have to say, once you have a deal with the US, with the US company or with the US government, they are very reliable. So this normally ends up, or this normally establishes a long standing relationship between a company and a US company, or between the US, between the company and US government. So the rewards are really high. And I, of course, I hope, I very much hope that you will be successful in your endeavors. I did not provide any contact details, but if you want to know more, you can, of course, and that especially goes, of course, for the Dutch participants. You can reach out to me via the NIDV. They have all my contact details, and I think you can even look me up on the internet as well, and you will find my details. So thank you very much for your time, yeah, I would like to leave it at that, Thierry.
Thank you very much, Pieter-Henk. Thank you for was very practical advice and very inspiring indeed. So we're very lucky because we have now with us a third, another counterpart from François and Pieter-Henk. We stand representing Italy, Francesco Greco. I believe you're a Navy man, so you probably will give another view on the defense market in the US. The floor is yours, Francesco. for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Thierry. Good morning to the ones that are connected from the United States. Bon après-midi aux colleghi della France. Good mittag for the one in the Netherlands, and buon pomeriggio ai miei connazionali in Italia. I hope you can hear me and also see me well here on the camera. I'm, as Thierry has already mentioned, I'm Commander Francesco Greco, working at the Embassy of Italy here in Washington, D.C. Would like, first of all, to thank the EU Alliance for giving me this opportunity to share a couple of thoughts with such, I would say, large and also important audience. I just try to give my perspective, as pretty much many things that I wanted to say have already been discussed thoroughly by both Mr. Pieter-Henk SCHROOR and also by Colonel WATTEAU. So I'll just give a personal perspective about a couple of things. This is the agenda, which I hope you can see here on the screen, that I would like to follow very briefly. First of all, I mean, the role of the office I work within is basically to represent the Italian National Armament Director towards the United States government. And you can see that on the first point of this slide, but also fostering cooperation in the fields of research and development and armaments program with U.S. counterparts. We also have the willingness to support and advise companies in the defense ecosystem, and I'm speaking about, you know, the one on the European, for what matters to me, Italian side, for this cooperation with the U.S. defense industries. At the same time, pretty much as my French colleague and also Dutch colleague, we also support the procurement of systems for the armed forces in Italy through transactions that are either for military sales or directly with the U.S. Contractors holding a license for exporting those goods through the direct commercial sales channel. So next one, I just wanted to briefly give you a very short insight about the DoD defense budget process, as I think that's also another element that is important to know and to understand, to take sound, I would say, commercial and industrial decision. As pretty much Mr. SCHROOR already mentioned, it is very, also this process is very complex and complicated because it involves various institutions and also governmental entities. Why I think it is important to know at least the basics of this process, of the, you know, how the budget in the US is formed, because it can anticipate and help industry anticipating a business driven decision. So by analyzing what will go in the next budgeting, in the next authorization bill for defense, it will be very easier to understand what are the line of tendencies and the sector where the Department of Defense, what matters to us, will invest and will put resources on. And you can see here basically the three red sentences are the three level of budgeting process. The first one, the topmost, is the federal one. The one in the middle is basically the one that authorized the DoD and defense-related activities to actually take place, with also an indication of the money that will be put into those activities. The bottom one, called the Appropriation Bill, I think it's one of the most important, because once it is approved, it gives contracting authorities a contracting purchasing power to the DoD contracting officers that were mentioned earlier by Mr. SCHROOR and by Colonel WATTEAU. So just a little bit of this as, you know, a little bit of context. Going a little bit more into detail, why is it always, although difficult, why we believe it's always worthwhile to you know, to try to enter the U.S. defense market, because it is a very wealthy market. It shows, as you can see here in this slide, a steadily and constantly increase. The figure that you will see on the right of this slide tells $778 billion for the appropriation bill that was approved a few months ago. we can anticipate that for this next ongoing financial cycle, that figure will break the $800 billion threshold. So it is for sure worthwhile to invest and to consider this as a target market for sure. And this, of course, is on the monetary side. But as has already been mentioned before, doing business with the U.S. counterpart, it's a very once you have overcome those initial difficulties, it's very rewarding because it's very reliable, both on the government side and also on the industrial side. In the next couple of slides, I try also to give you a little bit more perspective about how the U.S. DoD budget is pretty much spread and divided. I don't want you to be confused by the figures here. The thing that I would like to underline are the procurement and research development and technology and engineering basically values, which basically together, combined together, makes more than $250 billion. So procurement on systems, but also research for future technologies and future systems. So there is definitely space there for your endeavors and for your ideas. In the next one, I have tried also to give you a little bit more of a perspective about the three main services that pretty much have purchasing power, plus, of course, the joint part of it. Pretty much the defense budget, it's spread one-third for the three main services, Army, Navy, and of course Air Force, being the two latter ones, so Navy and Air Force, more technology intensive than the Army, as of course the Army needs to take care of more people, and thence the military personnel expenditure for the Army will be higher, and then they need to compensate by unfortunately lowering a little bit the procurement and RDT&E figures to compensate for that. Another insight I would like to give is basically what are the main focus area where basically this money, this funding are spent. The money and the funding are basically created for pursuing a coherent strategy, which is set at highest level of the U.S. government, at the White House level. And the main driver, they've been mentioned also by Colin, but also I will be very briefly. So first of all, of course, taking care of the people. Secondly, win the strategic competition with peer competitors, China and Russia. Most importantly for us, for the one that have convened here today, it's investing and developing future capabilities and disruptive technologies to support the national workforce and strengthening the technological advantage of the United States. In the national workforce, there is something about the concept of reshoring the national workforce, and then all the theme that has already been mentioned by Mr. SCHROOR related to the Buy American and to, again, the reshoring of the supply chain in the United States. Last but not least, of course, modernizing the system for maintaining military superiority. As far as the research and engineering areas, priority areas are concerned, you can find them here. It's, I would say, I will not delve into the details of this. This is for your reference because I believe it's a good starting point for matching what your, let's say, proposition value are, and if your proposition value pretty much match with the DoD research and engineering priority. These are very actual, all of them. You can see biotechnology, you can see the 5G, but also the next G, and so on and so forth. Many of these priorities are also overlapping, and we believe that's an excellent thing with priorities, EDF priorities in Europe. So there is definitely space to cooperate and optimize within this field. Before closing, a couple of key messages for successful cooperation. Much of the things have already been mentioned by Mr. SCHROOR. So just here a couple of additional thoughts. It it is the Buy American. It is a compelling law. Of course, we understand that, and we have unfortunately exception, but that doesn't mean that the door is closed. The door is not closed. The door is open. It's just a matter of following the right footstep and the right strategies for entering the US market. How can we do that? But of course, many things have already been mentioned. I would like to underline the sometimes importance to considering the direct presence of production warehouses in the United States, as long as strategic alliances with US companies has already been mentioned. It is important, and I try to give a little bit of insight about that, to have a very good knowledge of the political, of course, law, industrial, and administrative US ecosystem, because that will, of course, inform sound strategic, commercial, and business decisions. It is also important to concentrate efforts in those sectors that are, of course, a priority for the DoD, for what matters to us, and in those sectors concentrate the greatest effort possible with perseverance and long-term investment. So again, if you cannot afford to have those kind of long-term investment, maybe it is worthwhile to consider other pathway, other ways and other countries. But on the good side of it, we can mention history of success, not only by a British company like BAE, which has had a pathway of growth and success over the last 50 years, but also for what matters to Italy, for Italian companies like Fincantieri, like Leonardo, that have started maybe doing activities on behalf or as a tier 1 or 2 supplier of a US prime, and now increasing their industrial base, their industrial footprint here in the United States, have become prime contractors for major DoD programs. This is important. For doing this is important, of course, of using, as I already said, a systemic approach and create constantly credibility on your value proposition. For the bullet number 2, industrial sectors with the increased opportunities. Well, I think I would like to mention 3. First one is the highly specialized manufacturing, as again, the United States are trying to reshoring their industrial manufacturing capability. Secondly, the naval shipbuilding and constructions, as again, there is a demand for increasing the number of naval vessels for the US Navy and the US Coast Guard. And also, thirdly, I would like to mention the complex electronic system that can be used both by the U.S. armed forces, but also sold abroad as a foreign military sales effort. Ways for entering into the U.S. defense market. I will not elaborate more on this, because Mr. SCHROOR has already mentioned this very thoroughly with all the things that are related to cooperation, co-development, and co-production. I will therefore go just to the last slide. Again, these are being already mentioned during the speech of the previous speakers. There are industry days. Industry days can be done within the context of a more complex meeting like AUSA that have already been mentioned. DoD programs like the foreign comparative testing, that's one of the most open for basically for the European industries for presenting their proposals. And there are also other side initiatives like the global needs, which is similar to the FCT, but it's more focused on specific requirement by the DoD. We already mentioned the meeting. We already mentioned the B2B and the B2G, so I won't go any further into that. I will just like to conclude here my presentation, giving you and leaving you my POC in case any further question arise over the next hours, days, or months. Thanks a lot for your attention, and pending your question, I will hand the floor to Thierry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greco. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you very much for this presentation. If you don't mind, we'll go straight away to the next speakers, because I am aware of the time running. So you had the overview from the 3 European Defence Co-operation Attachés, France, the Netherlands, and Italy. And now I would like to give the floor to two speakers from who work for the state of Maryland, Mr. Andrew Kreinick and Amy O'Donnell, and we will have an overview from them. They will explain why we have, so to speak, engaged with Maryland as part of the EU Alliance project, and in particular, as far as the planned mission in October is concerned. So I will hand over the floor to Andrew Kreinick. Andrew is Regional Manager at the Maryland Department of Commerce and Office of International Trade and Investment. Andrew, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Thierry. Bonjour tout le monde. What I'd like to talk to you about today is Maryland. Maryland's profile outside the U.S. is not particularly high. We're not particularly well known, but I think that by the end of this meeting, you'll understand why Maryland is a good location. We border Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was actually carved out of Maryland. So we have a very close relationship with Washington, D.C. And we have over 50 federal labs and military bases located in Maryland. And many of the federal regulatory agencies are based in Maryland. And if not, they're not based in Maryland, they're based in Washington, which borders Maryland. So Maryland is actually quite a good location. Let me explain something about Maryland. And after I explain about why Maryland is a good location, I'd like to talk to you about a potential strategy that we have in Maryland that may be of interest to some of you as a way to enter the US market.
Sorry, Andrew, sorry to interrupt. Oh, okay, I was wondering whether you were going to move your slides. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. So why Maryland? We have a very skilled workforce. We have world-class education. We have some top universities here, Johns Hopkins University, University of Maryland. And University of Maryland, for instance, has more quantum scientists and researchers than any other place in the world. We have innovative business leaders. We're a major research and development hub for the United States. We have good credit ratings. We have a great quality of life here. So in terms of the numbers, we are a very affluent state. We have the highest median household income in the nation. We have about 6 million people. We are very export oriented. We do over $12 billion worth of exports. We also are #1 in terms of the federal research and development dollars that come into a state per capita. Johns Hopkins University probably is the highest recipient of R&D money in the country. We are considered to be in the top 10. Baltimore is considered to be in the top 10 for rising cities for startups. We have a very innovative culture here. We've got top life science clusters. We've got a very active entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have over 50 incubators and research parks here. And as I mentioned, we have some leading technical universities. In terms of our workforce, very skilled workforce, technology and science workers. We've got STEM concentration. We're #2 with professional and technical workers. And we've got a great technology talent pipeline, something that Maryland focuses on quite intensely, particularly in areas of life science and cybersecurity. We've got the #2 concentration of doctoral scientists and engineers. 2%, we're #2 in terms of the percent of population with graduate degrees or higher. We have over 50 colleges and universities here, and we're considered to be #6 with the best school system among states. So in terms of our industries, IT and cybersecurity, we're the largest cluster of cybersecurity in the country. We have 116,000 workers in the cybersecurity industry. It is growing exponentially. We have developed some very strong and active workforce development programs to bring more workers into cybersecurity. We also have a wide range of upskilling programs to make sure that people maintain and improve their skills. We have 15 of the top 20 aerospace companies here. We have drone companies here. We have satellite companies here. NASA Goddard is located in Maryland. The National Weather Service is located here in Maryland. A lot of federal agencies. Logistics and distribution, because of our location on the mid-Atlantic coast, we have easy distribution and access to all parts of the country. Life sciences, we have over 2,700 life science companies located here. NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and FDA are located right here in Maryland. We're also quite focused on advanced manufacturing, and we are improving our advanced manufacturing skills and bringing more workforce into advanced manufacturing. We've also have financial professional services, and with the military and federal agencies, we have and you'll be meeting Amy, we have a department in our Department of Commerce that focuses and specializes on working with the military and the federal government. So if you do become a Maryland company, you would have access to those services. In addition, I know that some of you are textile companies, and at one time, Maryland was quite a textile center. A lot of that capability went to Asia. However, we do have these federal research and development labs that are always interested in testing out new and advanced kinds of textiles. So there is opportunity to work together with the federal R&D labs in order to get your product into the supply chain. If any of you are interested in agriculture and food distribution, we are a major center for food distribution in the country. And we have a very large poultry and a growing vertical and greenhouse agricultural industry here. So here are some of the companies that are located in Maryland. You perhaps recognize some of the names: Amazon, Morgan Stanley, Marriott, McCormick, Lockheed Martin. Boeing has a presence here. We've got a lot of the big names located right here. We have 4 international airports that are conveniently located to Maryland, major highways, major rail lines, and easy access to New York, Boston, etc. Plus, we have the Port of Baltimore, which can accept the Panamax ships. So it's a deep harbor, and it's the closest harbor to the Midwest. Strategic location, as I mentioned, it's next door to Washington, D.C. Baltimore has been named the #2 city for connectivity with different parts of the country, and we're within an overnight drive to 1/3 of the U.S. population. There are a lot of development opportunities here. We have lots of development parks for various industries. And in terms of being an affordable hub, our cost of living in Baltimore and even in the Washington area is substantially less than areas like New York, Seattle, Boston, etc. We're considered to have an excellent lifestyle. We have beaches, mountains, forests, 50 state parks. We've got world-class sailing, and there are lots of safe places to live, plenty of sports as well. We're a very diverse state. We rank #7 in diversity among states. About 15% of our population is immigrant. In certain counties, in Montgomery County, for instance, which is just outside Washington, 30% of the population is immigrant. It's a very welcoming and diverse state to locate in. What I'd like to talk about particularly is this last item here, the soft landing program. This, I think, could be a good strategy for companies interested in doing business in the US, and in particular locating in Maryland. We have over 20 participating incubators. What this program does, it allows companies to either have a hot desk, a co-sharing space, or a dedicated office, depending on the incubator, and they could stay there for 3 months at a highly discounted rate. The incubators, as well as the Maryland Department of Commerce, provides mentoring and networking assistance for companies that would be part of this program. The governor just announced an expansion of the soft landing program. It's called the Global Gateway Program. For the first 50 approved companies, there would be a 6-month stipend for space and services in a participating incubator. This would include mentoring and networking assistance. As I said, Maryland Department of Commerce has a terrific federal and military department that could be of assistance. Plus, we have a lot of consultants, agencies that are quite open to meeting people coming into Maryland. Why does Maryland do this? Because we feel that if you get an opportunity while you're here in Maryland, chances are you're going to want to locate here because of the welcoming environment and the pro-business environment that we have. So I'm happy to talk more with anyone who's interested in this program. And here's my contact information. I'm not sure how many of you previously were familiar with Maryland, but I think you can see that Maryland really does stand out among states, and it's what our task is in raising the profile of Maryland so that more of the world knows that Maryland exists. And I'm glad I've had this opportunity to speak with you. And now I turn it over to my colleague, Amy O'Donnell, who's going to be talking about how to do business with the government from an American perspective.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, Amy, the floor is yours. And thanks very much for getting us an insight into Maryland, Andrew. Thanks very much. Amy, sorry, the floor is yours.
No, thank you very much. I have the challenging of going last, but I also had great friends in François, Peter, and Francesco that have studied the American government system so well that they may be able to teach me a few things about how it works. So I'll try to highlight the things that have not been covered. As Andrew said, I am with Maryland. I am in a special office in the Department of Commerce, specifically the Military and Federal Affairs Office. And simply my role is to connect the needs or the interest of the base. I am not a contracting officer. I will not do their contracts for them. But my job is to know and understand them, understand their presence in Maryland, and help make connections between all parties, between our elected officials, between companies such as yourselves, to strengthen the bases, to strengthen the government, to strengthen the commercial sector in Maryland. As a way of background, I have almost 38 years. I just left the Department of Defense, specifically the Navy, although I've worked Army, Air Force. My degree is not in business. I'm an engineer through and through. I came out because I know DOD, I know the Navy, specifically Coast Guard, Air, and these systems. And I'm a big believer in the state of Maryland. I've lived in the state for quite a while, moving here from New York. So I will not be able to tell you every particular of the whole DOD which is the Department of Defense, in the less than 10 minutes I have. But let me set the stage for some of the points you spoke about today, because, again, I'm incredibly impressed by the Attachés' work. They understand the structure. Let me augment that a little. As Andrew said, Maryland, where I am located, has over. So federal installations are those that are not DoD, but are governmental. I don't want to drop those from your consideration. I know you are focused on the DoD. I will focus on the Department of Defense, but there are tremendous opportunities in our federal labs, and I'll talk about that. We have more than 2 times any other state located in Maryland. And that has to do, as Andrew said, is we're right on the border of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia. We're all right in the commuting distance. I live in Maryland. I have held so many different jobs with Department of Defense, always commuting from my house. That's the sweet spot here. We also have 12 major Department of Defense installations, and that's what I have come on with my partners to run the connection between those defense locations, those federal, and the state. Let me show you very quickly. I'm not going to be able to cover all of these, but we can speak about any of these and follow on. In the state of Maryland, I've broken it down by Air Force, Army, Navy, and Coast Guard for Department of Defense. Joint Base Andrews, I think if you've looked at anything about the United States, you understand how big that is. The Army, we have Aberdeen Proving Ground, Fort Meade, which is high into intelligence, that includes the Cyber Command. Fort Detrick is where a lot of the medical and research for Army is done, and the Delphi Research Center. In the Navy, we have Pax River, which is the aircraft division, so it's a test area that also does weapon interfacing to those aircrafts. You have Indian Head, which is actually a manufacturing, design, and research center for weapons, missiles, energetics, ordnance, explosive ordnance disposal, and chem-bio. You have Carderock, that's a ship design center. Annapolis, many things, but I think you would most recognize our Naval Academy is there, turning out all our future officers. And Bethesda has our medical center. It has a university for our Department of Defense doctors on it. The Coast Guard is a depot where we're actually like a shipyard working some of the ships. What I want to do in the red block here, and again, you probably need to just go to the internet for any of these if that kind of is in your technology area. Each of these commands has what we call many tenants. You think of it as kind of a landlord. You have a base, and there's a commander that, or captain or an admiral that runs that base. But within that base, you have many different mission commands, installations in there, and each one is its own block on that DoD diagram that does its own piece of DoD mission, may make their own contracts. So it is not a one description. For instance, I believe it's Fort Meade has over 50 tenants on that command. And so each one presents maybe a different specialty, a different focus, a different budget piece to spend. And so a lot of research has to be done. Again, Maryland, if you're in Maryland, we can help with a little bit of that. The federal agencies, I don't want to lose those. I tried to write the acronym for you all. See, we have everything from CORE to Department of Energy to environmental agencies here to the Bureau, FBI, everybody knows the FBI, to oceanographic and atmospherics, and even the nuclear groups. And again, it has to do with how close we are to to Washington, D.C. But each one of these has budgets, not highlighted today, but I assure you they have federal budgets to spend and missions to execute, and may provide opportunities beyond just DoD. So I wanted to leave that with you. What does this mean? And I'm not going to make this about Maryland, but in Maryland, the reason we pay so much attention to this, I'll go to the 2020, and we're currently updating our data right now for 2022 and a year. Maryland gets through awards. Companies in Maryland have gotten 5.1% of all that DoD spending. Now you would say, well, it's only 5.1%. Well, let's think about this. We have 50 states in our United States, plus districts, Puerto Rico, Guam, others, plus our foreign partners that do get awards. So to get 5% of 100% is I think, a fairly weighty percentage. Number 4 in the state from the DoD agencies. So for instance, 37% of our funding came from the Army, 36 Navy, Marine Corps. I think they're having a competition there. And that probably has to do with the amount and different technologies we have within Maryland competing for that. But out of all the states in the United States, we're number 4 for the awards coming through. So that's why we also want to make sure we're focused on helping our businesses be successful. This is really, I almost didn't show this because the list is much longer than what I could cut off for a slide here. I don't want you to think this is it. On the left side is the categories for the type of industries that these get the most types of contracts. And these categories are very broad. For instance, scientific R&D is not one thing. It's a range of all kinds of technologies. Having been an engineer, it's not one thing. It's everything from autonomy to new materials for explosives. It really runs the gambit, right? From new cyber to computing systems, manufacturing methods. It's a broad category. I did try to pull out just a few of the technology areas that tended to get the most award, and these then tend to line up very nicely with the recent priorities that have already been highlighted by the attachés. Aircraft and related, chembio, autonomy, ordnance munitions, health research, especially in the DoD, military, survival and treatment, computer science, modeling, ship, and of course, cyber. So they line up very nicely, but these are not exclusives. Let me just do some basics, and I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues today have very nicely, but having been inside the system, if you will, and I was not a contracting officer, but my whole career was trying to get things done in the government through contracts, through partnerships with the labs, so I've kind of seen it. Each contract that goes out from the government, regardless of where it came out in those entities, has some fundamental basics, but it also is tailored. It's tailored to the technology being asked for, the type of industry. So again, are we talking to cyber, or are we buying a ship, right? And the nature of the purchases, right? Are we looking to do some technology development, or are we buying bolts, right? Each one of those requirements will be tailored. You probably, and I would say the same thing to domestic companies as well as yourselves. You have to research and prepare as best as you can, and there are aids for your industry type, where you fit in. And that's a very broad thing. I understand how complex that is. Somebody spoke earlier about kind of understanding the advantages your country already has and reminding those that you're talking to what they are. I will tell you there's almost I think it's 3 million employees of DoD, could be growing. They don't all know the same things. So you need to understand what agreements your country has with the United States and help those you're speaking to know those, because there's just too many players. And then what types of goods and services you're providing will have different terms in the contracts. I believe you may have already covered this, but I did want to include this, that there are some fundamentals when you start to get into the game that all foreign companies have to do. I've put a quote up there from our government accounting office that they have more bidding opportunities as they're tracking them with foreign entities. So that goes to there are opportunities. Didn't say it was easy. Those who have international trade agreements get additional benefits, as we've talked about. Do you know and understand what your countries are, and that you could, in a conversation with a contractor here or an agency here, be able to simply explain that so that it can help you? You have to get what they call an N-cage code here, you see. If you don't have one, you need that before you would enter into a government contract here. It's a mandatory thing. You can go on the internet. It's there. It explains what you need to do to get that. You need that. And I apologize for, it looks good on my screen, but now there's a blank here. My apologies. You need that because to get an award for the government, if you're literally going to try to get an award from the U.S. government, you must be in their SAM, S-A-M, System of Awards Management, to get one, okay? To get one, you need the N code to get in there. So again, these are on the intranet. I'm not going to take the time, but I did want to, at least when you get close to that point, you need to know your trade agreements and be in the systems, okay? The ways to enter, and we talked about business to business or business to government. I wanted to use a different term, public contracts and private, okay? Public contracts is if you find your business, you find the area in DoD, and I'll talk about that in a minute, where you fit in. And I apologize, we're over, so I'll go quickly here. The contract would come straight to you, your company. You've checked all the blocks from the U.S. government. That means that you have read the solicitation, you've answered all the requirements, and believe me, who spoke about we're very, to be fair, and that's the premise here. They want a lot of competition, a lot of non-sole source, usually contracts. To do that, we have so many terms, so many regulations that it even can be complex for domestic companies. And believe me, they want it simplified. But if you miss a requirement, if you didn't answer it, if you didn't fill out something right, your bid doesn't get, quote, competed. So it can be very complicated as you're starting the process. That's why there are people that either companies have professionals that do this, that have learned to do it, or they get assistance when they're doing a proposal. And again, it's different if it's a $1,000 contract. I know that's really not what we're talking about here versus a $50 billion, right? The complexity is going to be adjusted. A private is, again, a contract that you get from a prime. A prime can be the Lockheeds, the Boeings, the Northrop Grumman's, but it can be somebody they have under contract to do a large part of it, that then you could be a supplier to them. And all contracts are published. If you go in and you search on keywords, you can find sub-suppliers. A lot of people break in, maybe not make their whole business for 100 years as a sub to a sub, but learn the business by supplying that way. Because what that does is you only have to submit your cost, your requirements to the prime or the prime sub to be a supplier, to learn how the requirements go, learn how they do it, but you don't have to, quote, do the big bid. Okay, so I do want to emphasize, as you look at yourselves and where you fit in and what you have to offer, how you might be able to best break in. Okay, I will say, to my frustration sometimes inside, even if we couldn't find competition, they want everything to be a competitive basis because they believe it's the best product, service, best market. We all have taken economics. To that end, and I'm not going to be able to talk in a lot of detail, but there's this term, Federal Acquisition Requirements, or FAR, F-A-R. It is enormous in its regulatory. It has so many clauses. It is the textbook by which contracting officers will execute awards for programs, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Contracting officers do not decide what to buy or how to buy it. They simply administer a very complex competition process, or the FAR system, okay? In every solicitation statement of work that goes out, and they are all published, it will have endless FAR clause references in there that define the requirements, how to respond. It will have what experts you can and can't use, but those things need to be read. And this is where people sometimes get people that are expert to help them, because it is enormous in the idea of keeping things fair. They've over-regulated, in my opinion. Do not quote me, okay? All solicitations are published from the U.S. government, federal and DOD. There is no one-on-one walk-in, walk-out with a big check. That does not happen. Even SOCOM, who I've worked with, will go quickly. They have expedited contracting authority, but that does not mean they don't get something written, evaluated, where private, you could have a meeting and they can go a little bit quicker, okay? The contract, and again, this will be in the contract statement, they're not all the same, right? So if we're buying a bolt and there's 1,000 different kinds of bolts around the world, and there's nothing really secretive about that bolt, they're going to go for the lowest cost per unit, per total, whatever the terms are in the contract. Sometimes there's a technical aspect to that contract, okay? So they may have first technical qualification requirements. Again, that must be very clearly part of your proposal. Might be a written, might be exhibition of materials you've done. And then they'll see, are you technically qualified? Okay, and those standards will be described. And out of the ones that are found technically qualified, that might be the lowest cost. Sometimes, depending on maybe the risk in the contract, it might be of best value. You may be a higher cost, but offers some other advantage. And again, the terms are always in that statement of work. I can't tell you how clearly you have to read those, because everything's right there, but you got to read it. There are sometimes it'll be a fixed cost. This is how much we're paying. That's it. Sometimes there's a base cost plus fees. So if you beat the delivery date by, a percentage or days, you get an extra incentive. So do read for all those. And additionally, you've highlighted some of the requirements that may be in there that you don't want to see, but they will be there. So sometimes there'll be work that has high vulnerability. It could be weapons, cyber, critical infrastructure kind of things, where it may say US citizens only can work on this or be part of this. US security clearances. If there's a requirement for clearances, you would have to be attentive to that. Small businesses, we've talked about. Intellectual property ownership, mostly in R&D. I've done a considerable amount of R&D in my lifetime here. Be very, very clear with what your property is going into it. And we do all understand that our patent and legal systems are not all the same. The government will honor that, but they may also have terms of their own intellectual property, especially if the contract is one of the Navy or Army or Air Force labs that you're partnering with. So they may own technology that they don't want disclosed. So this can be tricky. We'll not be able to cover it. Do pay attention to delivery locations and conditions. A lot of contracts had problems during the shipping issues of recent years. Inspection standards or acceptance standards for products. This can be software, physical items, materials. The contract will call out how that will be tested or accepted. You know, they may just take your certificate. They may want to do their own test. Some of those tests are not NATO standards. They may be DOD, they may be Navy, they may be Army, unique standards to match how it's going to be used. Again, it'll be called out, but you have to kind of pay attention. I've seen that. And unfortunately, some do call out no foreign. I will tell you that I've done many, many overseas contracts. They don't tend to want to do that. In fact, we get a lot of pushback from White House and Pentagon and others who, you know, politically that's not a desired thing, but it does happen when it makes sense. Okay. When in doubt, when you don't see something, don't assume. There's always a point of contact. Contact that POC for clarifications. And prior to the closing date, after it's closed, it doesn't matter. We've talked about know where you fit in the industry. So are you a cyber? Are you a propulsion? Are you a chemical? Are you autonomy? You can be many different things, but they're on those org charts. There are many, many different ways to enter, different supply chains, different phases. Also the life cycles, you know, are you going to be a manufacturer? Are you going to be tech support? Are you going to be modeling? Are you going to make a prototype? And then which primes or subs in the US hold those kind of contracts? Again, everything is published in databases, but it may take time to research and know yourself. I wanted to very quickly, and I'm glad that the installation, the org charts for DoD were put up. I wanted to give you some terminology, especially as you come into a trade event in the fall, and I'm sure Andrew will brief you again if you need it before the AUSA. So that's going to be Army only. There are equivalent ones later. Sea, Air, and Space is the Navy Marine Corps equivalent. It's always in the springtime. Air Force holds them, so on. So at our Pentagon, the services, so be it the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, will set the requirements. They'll determine we need ships, we need aircrafts, we need hypersonics, we need a new missile, we need more uniforms, we need whatever. They will work between the budget submissions, which were talked about very nicely, and getting Congress to approve, And then once the budgets are approved, they set the needs, they send those down. They send them down to what we call program offices. So a program office, there'll be a program office for aircraft, a program office for air-launched missiles, a program office for Army research. There are a lot of program offices. Again, they're searchable. Each one has a purpose. They get their part of the budget. They get the needs they fill, and they go and execute it. So whether they need a large contract for a new hypersonic missile, they're going to buy a new ship, they're going to buy a new submarine, they're going to buy a new type of helmet. The program offices are where the big or any contract will come out that buys what you see on those line items in the budgets, which again are published for the world to see. Some of that money that doesn't go out on the contracts comes down to what we call our engineering centers or labs. There are tech centers within the Department of Defense that specialize, as I was kind of going through the list. Carter Rock is a Navy one that does ship design. Pax River does aircrafts. Indian Head does weapons and munitions, and so on. They will get a large chunk of money to do specific technology, usually specific focus areas. So if you're a tech-based company, you probably also want to be aware of your engineering centers in the DoD. They will also award contracts, but you're going to see maybe more R&D contracts, parts contracts, not those big mega contracts, but nonetheless contracts that may be good for the middle or smaller company, and it will be coupled to their execution. So in this case, you'll probably be closer to the SMEs, but these are all opportunities. Okay. My recommendations, if you've decided you're going to buy, do you know your trade agreements, your terms? Do you know what your favored nation is? Just know your opportunities with the U.S. government, because we have tons of agreements. We want those agreements. They are used. I personally have done contracts in France, England, the Netherlands, Israel, Bulgaria, and each one was different at the end because of the agreements we have with those countries. Okay. They were all private companies, but their countries had agreements, MOAs, these kinds of things. Again, I talked about the cage codes before you would actually get into the system. Determine your customer base. Again, you've got to do that analysis, and every company has to do this, the public and the primes. Consider being that sub just to get your feet wet on U.S. soil. And again, in Maryland, I'm going to show you some sites we use to help our companies. Establish that presence if you are really getting into it. It helps to have a U.S. footprint or take advantage of that program that Andrew, once you're getting close to making those connections, because you will be there at their industry days, at their public days. You'll be able to do office calls, all kinds of things that are very hard remote. Determine if the U.S., and this has helped other companies I've worked with in the past that are overseas, they were looking to our shoreline, but hadn't looked to the contracts the U.S. government is doing in their own regions, be it through the bases there. We talked about foreign military sales, but also where we're forward deployed or have offices. It's a great way, not maybe to get that deep contract legacy going, but to build your resume of doing work with the U.S. Also look for companies in your country that are doing work that you may be able to come in as a supplier to build your resume, okay? And then I want to just always, having worked with technology a lot, we get stuck most on contracts in patent law and intellectual property for things that have newness to them. So please make sure you have looked at your material ahead of time and taken care of it. I'm going to leave these. I know that the site will provide you these slides. These are some Maryland materials that have been put together, how to begin contracting to help our companies connect with the federal agencies and the military agencies. So there's a link here, and I know Andrew and I will follow up with you. Here's my contact information, and I will just add something I know I'm very much over that was not in my slide, but having listened to our speakers. Besides contracts, and this is more for those laboratory engineering centers in DoD, and again, I've done a great deal of these. There are things called tech bridges. Each service is, in fact, as an earlier speaker talked about, very much looking for what commercial technology or other can be pulled in and used for DoD purposes. So look for the word tech bridges. Also, there are endless agreements, partnerships. It doesn't start so much with money, but it starts with cooperative research between DoD laboratories and foreign either companies or countries if they're related. So we've done data exchange agreements, international program agreements, international MOUs, but it is a good way when you find maybe something that's being worked here or you think you have a connection to that, to start an initial discussion and partnership with the direct Navy, DoD, Army experts in that through these agreements that can lead to joint developed products or something in that long stream. Thank you. I apologize for going over. Again, have a great day. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Amy. Very helpful indeed, and especially all the slides about the available resources. Yes, we have gone over the initial scheduled time, so I can see this. Some questions were asked and were answered. Maybe not that the last one from Mr. Amelin, but I'm not sure. I'm not a specialist in defense contracts, so I would not attempt to answer it. Maybe that we can direct you to the DGA or the relevant organizations there. So in any case, if you agree, Julie, and because of all our speakers have very kindly agreed to stay on beyond the initial time, I suggest we wrap up. Just before we do that, if you still have questions, please reach out to us. We will obviously check again the ones that have been put. You have our contact details, especially those who belong to our different ecosystems. But Julie will give you more details now, and then we can continue the conversation, obviously after the webinar has ended. Julie, I'll leave you to do the wrap up and the conclusion.
Yes. Thank you, Thierry, and thank you to all our speakers, because I think we had a very great overview of all the opportunities and challenges of this market, and also we had very practical tips to address the markets with, for example, the importance of being well prepared. And at the end, a very interesting focus on Maryland, and even that Maryland was maybe not well known until now. We can see now that it has a lot to offer. So thank you very much for that. So we just wanted to share with you an overview of the planned program for the mission to the US. As I said, we decided to target the AUSA trade show, which is a major trade show for the American defense sector. And this trade show is organized in October from the 10th to the 14th. So we want to propose during the mission to begin with 2 days at the show. During these 2 days, to have a half-day guided tour and a day and a half of B2B meetings. I don't know, Thierry, feel free to interrupt me if you want to add anything on the show or on the
Sure,
program.
if you want, I can take over just because I'm aware of the time. But
yeah,
I
okay.
mean, basically, in terms of the program, at this point, obviously, it's still very much a tentative program. There's a lot of things, obviously, that need to be specified. But overall, we split the week, 4 days in this particular case, between, as Julie said, the AUSA conference and exhibition, which takes place in Washington, where we will have we will organize a number of activities, and in particular B2B meetings. And then the idea is that we would then move on the last day, the second day, when we are in Washington. There's a fast train, there's a commuter train, so it's very easy to travel from Washington DC to Baltimore, to then spend the rest of the time in the state of Maryland. So that's why you got there on the slide, both in the morning, the afternoon, and then finish on the fourth day. So it's a very compact, obviously, program with a side visit. A lot of the things here still have to be confirmed. We're still working on it with Andrew and his team in Maryland. And we also need to clarify a number of activities. But that basically is, in a nutshell, what we are planning to do. I saw a question earlier about, what is the cost? Well, the cost for the program is free. That's the beauty of being funded by the European Union. You know, if you were to go through the usual channels, you'd have to pay for it. We have, and Julie, correct me, a lump sum that we can award, and that's why we have this competitive process. Till the end of this month, the possibility to have up to €1,000, which will cover part of your expenses. But basically, you have all the details there. You have a lot of information you got today from our Defense Co-operation Attachés, from the representative from the Maryland state. There's a lot of information there. Obviously, it will take time for you to digest all that. But the next step for you is really to see whether that is relevant for your company and then to apply. Sorry, Julie, if I just take over very briefly. I was aware of the time.
No, that was perfect, Thierry. Thank you. And the only thing that I want to add is we will share with you, obviously, the slides of today, the replay also of the webinar, and I put here in the slide the process of the call for SMEs selection. As you can see, we address here basically all European SMEs and the large scope of industries, going from technical textile to advanced materials, cybersecurity, deep tech, etc. And as I mentioned previously, we really need to understand what is your value proposition, previous experience in the US, and your needs, because for the companies that will be selected, we will also organize several type of webinars, because we understood, all of us understand that the importance of being well prepared to go to the US market. So the idea is really to understand your needs, your target, and that's why for the process we ask you to fill in the survey online. You will have the link, and also to send back the application form in English to myself. So you have my address here, and this call will be open until June 30. I think we will stop here. So thank you very much for all this precious information. If you have more questions, feel free to ask us. And as you could hear, all our speakers today are also willing to help. So feel free to ask your questions. Even if you have questions on the process, feel free to ask me, and we will be happy to help. I think we are.
Yes, we are done. Thank you very much, Julie.
The last one. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you again to our speakers, and partners, and for your support, and wishing you all a nice week, and then and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks again for your participation. Thank you very much. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
A bientôt.
Bye-bye.
Merci.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Au revoir à
Merci,
tous.
Monsieur François.
Bye-bye.